my back. But I've since discovered much more about it. And I believe it is a dangerous way for men to find brotherhood and fellowship, though many join for good motives and social reasons. In fact, they've now written a little booklet about me, which they've circulated, warning people against this dreadful man, David Pawson. It was written by the Dean of the Anglican Cathedral in Hong Kong, which is an interesting sidelight. But I've seen the fruits of some of these things. I was in a sports stadium not far from here, and an elderly couple came up to me after the meeting. He was a tall, soldierly-looking man. I would put them in their 70s, but she was in quite a bad state. She was bent over, she was shaking, her cheeks were sunken, and she looked quite ill. And the husband said to me, "Would you pray for my wife?" And he said, "She's been such a good wife to me for so many years, but can't bear to see her like this." I said, "Well, I don't like to pray for healing until I know what's wrong. What's wrong with her?" And he said, "That's the problem. The doctors can't find out." And I said, "Well, I don't like to pray until I know what I'm praying about, so I'll ask the Lord to tell me, and if he does, we'll go ahead." And I asked the Lord, and he did. I said to the man, "Are you a Freemason?" He said, "Yes." He said, "I don't go to the lodge much these days, but yes, I am." I said, "In the name of Jesus, go home, burn everything you've got connected with that, and your wife will be healed." And he said, "I don't know where everything is." And the wife said, "I do." Wives tend to be like that. It's quite irritating. If you ever lose anything, go to your wife and she'll say, "Where did you last have it?" And there it is. Anyway, they went home and they had the bonfire, and she was no better. They burned things in the backyard and there was no improvement. And he actually shouted up to the sky. He said, "God, that man said she'd be healed if we burned it. And we burned it, she's no better." And for the first time in his life, God spoke to him and said, "There's more in the garage." And they went to the garage and found some other stuff and put it on the bonfire. Came back the next night. Came to me after the meeting. I couldn't believe my eyes. The wife looked 10 years younger. The husband looked as if I'd given him £1 million. There's a boy of 14 lives near us, and he's a bedwetter. Can't go camping without taking a rubber sheet, which causes all sorts of taunting and teasing. And the parents have had him to doctors, psychiatrists, everything, and they can't cure this bedwetting. But a friend of mine went to tea there and said, "Is there Freemasonry in this family?" Yes, his grandfather's the Grand Master of the lodge. And my friend simply prayed about that. The boy hasn't wet the bed once since. Now, you can explain these things away if you wish. But a man came to me not long ago, a medical doctor, and he was shaking with fear as he sat in the chair. And I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I've just been inducted into the 33rd degree. And he said, I found out we worship Lucifer. And he said, I go to church. And he said, I'm scared stiff." Well, we got that sorted out. I was in the Isle of Man and preaching in the theatre on the front at Douglas. And a man came up to me on the promenade and he said, "You David Pawson?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you the man who says you can't be a Christian and a Freemason?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I'm both." He said, "I'll give you 2 minutes to prove to me that you can't be both. And if you can prove it to me in 2 minutes, I'll resign." What a lovely challenge. Well, I remember taking my watch off and I said, "I'm not going to talk to you about the 33rd degree and what you get up to at the top. I said, I'm going to talk about one of the first oaths you took, one of the first promises you made, a bloody oath about what you would do to anybody who betrayed the secrets." And I said, "Jesus said that if you even wish anybody dead, you've begun to be a murderer. How about taking a bloody oath like that?" And he opened his mouth to say something and said, "I know what you're going to say. You're going to say it's only words, it's only a bit of ritual. We don't mean it." I said, "In the same Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, let your yes be yes, and let your no be no. Always mean what you say." That's a little neglected bit of the law of Christ that Christians don't always remember. But it's there. So I said, if you meant that oath, you were going against the Sermon on the Mount. If you didn't mean it, you were going against the Sermon on the Mount. And you say you're a follower of Jesus. Well, I have to say that he resigned that afternoon. And I did it in a minute and a half. It would cost him a lot because the Isle of Man is riddled with it, where all the tax exiles go and they do all their commerce in the lodge. It was going to cost him a lot in his business, but he resigned. Now let me finish this little bit where I began. It shows you I'm serious today. We're talking about serious things. I want to see in the church a brotherhood of men that beats that hollow, that has no secrets, that's in the light, and where the name of Jesus is central. And that's what Jesus meant the church to be, a brotherhood. It's why he chose 12 men to start it. It's amazing that we go for the women and children today, whereas Jesus, to build his church, went for men. And working men, most of whom worked with their hands. There was only one pen pusher among them. But he chose 12 ordinary working men, and he started a church that now numbers 1,500 million. When will we learn to do it Jesus' way? I'll tell you now what I hope will come out of today, that in every church represented here, there will begin a men's discipling program in that church. It worries me when I go to church after church and say, let me see your program of activities. And it's often quite a long list. There are things for babies, for playgroups, for the youth, for pensioners, women's coffee mornings. And I look in vain in 9 churches out of 10 for anything for men. And yet that was how Jesus began at the beginning.